Welcome everyone to the Road to One, where we get to hear different real estate investors' stories on how they got to their first deal. Today we have Joseph Frangos. Welcome.
What's up, everybody? What's up, John?
So, tell us about yourself. Where were you at when you decided to get into real estate?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and probably like a lot of people at that time, I was working a 9 to 5. So I was at that point in just corporate America doing I was a security analyst for a utility company, and loved it. And then lo and behold, real estate via YouTube popped up, and that was kind of the introduction, if anything.
Mhm. So, were you looking for it, or did it just kind of pop up?
No, so my wife, Crystal, was like, for some reason, I guess on YouTube, stumbled upon a video and sent it to me of a friend of ours now. His name's Quentin. And she's like, hey, this guy kind of looks like you. He's a Mexican dude with tattoos. And I think you would learn something from him. So I'm like, okay. So I like checked out the videos and still a little skeptical, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's no way you can make, right, 10K, 20K.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, there's no way. So I kind of brushed it off. But then
Mhm.
an event came up that was in Phoenix, the All In Freedom event. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, and Crystal, my wife's like, I'm going to go. And I said, okay, well, if you're going to go, I guess I'll go too.
Mhm.
And had we not gone to that event, I don't even know if we would have really dove into real estate.
Right.
Yeah.
It seemed like Crystal was kind of like the driving force behind this. What is it about it that got her excited?
She's always had a passion for real estate. Her dad has a background in owning rentals and
Mhm.
such, and she knows me as like the kind of hand me something and I'll just run off and go do it kind
Mhm.
of situation.
Yeah.
And so she brought it to me. I think with that idea in mind, right? If I bring this to Joseph, he'll get interested and then get the bug and maybe just run off with it. And that's literally what happened.
It's kind of funny because my wife's the same way in that she'll see something that's beneficial for everybody within the family, and then she'll start poking at you and trying to press the different buttons. So it's funny that your wife was doing that. Crystal was doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's expected, but yeah,
Yeah,
definitely it was a trip, man. It was a trip.
yeah. So after going to that event, where did that take you? Did you start going into different strategies, or where did that take you exactly?
Yeah, so that event was very, I would say at the level that we're all at now, right? I would consider it like a very beginner level event, right? It's where you
Mhm.
learn just enough to be able to go do something. And so the event was a 3 day event. So it was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I remember the drive back on Sunday. I was like, man, I'm going to do everything that I can to get a deal, right? Just
Mhm.
excited, amped up. That Monday, I was door knocking and cold calling like immediately. Like, didn't know what I was doing, didn't know what to say, didn't know anything. All I knew is that I wanted it. Like I wanted to get
Mhm.
after this business model. I was like, this is gonna be cool.
Yeah.
And so during that season, it was like, all right, well, obviously I only have X amount of time because of my job. And at that time I was still in the reserves with the army. So I'm like, I gotta be a present father, I gotta be a present husband, I gotta do my military duty and my job and this. I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
So what I ended up doing was working out a schedule with my boss where I would come in early to get off earlier, which then gave me more time at the back end of the day where I could just be on the phones. And so that's what I was doing. I was being on the phones Monday through Friday, but then Friday and Saturday nights, I would drive around and put up bandit signs. And that was like, when I say balling on a budget, we were cold calling with Google Voice, and we were getting bandit signs from the dollar store. So we'd buy these big cardboard boards and chop them
Mhm.
in three. Because then we're like, oh, we get three signs out of one. So I'm like 33 cents a sign. And literally for about 2 months, spun those things up. And then I had to leave for 3 weeks with the Army. So
Mhm.
it was like all this momentum to then kind of taper off and leave. And I was like, all right, well, I'm back now. And within like 2, 3 weeks, put up another bandit sign, got a phone call.
So, I mean, a lot of questions pop up. Firstly, how did you even know about the bandit signs?
So they talked about it at that event, right? They're talking about the various marketing strategies. It's cold calling, there's SMS, there's mailers, bandit signs, all that good stuff. And so I was like, man, we could do more than likely one of these or a couple of them, right? And what's within
Mhm.
the budget. And so that's how we figured out. what can we get? What can we buy that's relatively affordable so we're not spending I don't know. I remember at that time we wanted to buy a whole pallet full of signs. I think it
Mhm.
was like $1,200. And I was like, well, we could just go to the dollar store and buy these things. So that's what
Yeah.
we did.
I mean, that's amazing. When I was trying to do the bandit sign thing, I didn't even think about going to the dollar store or wherever and trying to pick up a bunch of signs and then splitting them up into three.
Yeah.
So that's really smart. Uh, as for your cold calling, I mean, how did you even pull the list? That costs money too.
So that was like kind of a funny thing, right? So we found driving for dollars, we found that out about that. So we're like, okay, let's just drive around and look for houses in our neighborhood. And so we would grab the addresses and like, I mean, when I say balling on a budget, man, like we were holding it down on the maps, screenshotting it, and then I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna get home and add this thing to a list. And then we would just use True People Search. And it
Oh.
was just like, hey, I'm gonna figure this out. And when I would call, it was always very like I was scared, I was kind of nervous. Like, what do I
Hmm.
tell these people? I'm calling them randomly. Like, hey, I was calling about your house. And yeah, so we just ended up using Google Voice and then True People Search and Drive for Dollars, just building out our own list. And that was before we ended up knowing about PropStream and all these other skip tracing platforms. I'm like, oh, there's a better way to do this.
That's, I mean, so far it's pretty amazing where you had very little information to start off with, but you're able to get all this done. Super resourceful. I mean, that's amazing.
Kind of have to be, right? I think that's the thing in real estate is
Mm,
how creative can I be? How resourceful can I be?
mm.
Whether that's with who I know or what I know, and just kind of taking different ideas and trying them out and seeing if they work. And obviously, not all of them are going to be a hit, but some of them are. And when they are, you're like, awesome, I can do that again.
Yeah. So you don't have a background in sales. What is a security analyst?
So my job at the utility company, it's like it's always a funny way to explain it, but it's
Mhm.
we would go like at least my job was to go out to the substations or the grid, as people like to
Mhm.
call it, and I would have to go make sure that it was like secure with locks and the signage. I'm like ready to sneeze. With locks and signage, and then making sure that the walls were a certain amount of height. And so I would have to be in contact with everybody in the company, drafting up reports, verifying that the federal requirements were being met within like the organization from a security standpoint.
Mhm.
Uh, it was a fun job. I enjoyed it. It's my first job after the army, and
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, this is cool." Um, but then I didn't realize how much I was driving around and just driving through neighborhoods, and it didn't dawn on me until we got into real estate. I'm like, I've been driving for dollars the whole time.
Yeah,
So yeah, it ended up becoming a catch 22 in a good way, where I'm like, oh, okay, I can now leverage my time in the field driving around to then help the business.
very cool. Not surprising, but very cool with everything you've said so far. Um, okay, so then you started doing that, and how long did it take you to get to your first deal?
So well, that event was in May, and we got our first deal in I want to say it was September, August or September. I have to go back and look. Um, and mind you, right, there was that gap in time from when I had to leave for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So when I got back, it was about 3 weeks after that. But it was putting out bandit signs 3 days, basically a week. And that was how our first deal came in was we would be creative with our bandit signs. So we
Hmm.
would put, we'll buy your house and buy you McDonald's, we'll buy your house and buy you tacos, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So the sign that got the hit was outside of a McDonald's. I like positioned it towards the drive-through from this light pole, and it said, "We'll buy your house and buy you McDonald's." And this guy saw it and he called it.
Wow. I mean, that's very, very good to a good way to make sure you stand out and really smart.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think, right? If everybody's putting out the same signs, right? We buy houses cash, we buy houses cash.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, what can we do to be funny and stick out, right? Where, in essence, in my our logic was, if it's funny enough, right? And we live in the day and age where everybody takes pictures of everything, right? The
Hmm.
videos. It's
Yeah.
funny enough. Somebody's gonna post it to their TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Snapchat apparently is a big thing these days now, and
Mhm.
uh, and then share it. Now it's like our marketing is now going further. because of these random bystanders who think it's funny.
Yeah. So when you got that first deal, you got it locked up, wholesale deal, right?
Wholesale deal, yeah. And dude, it was. I remember when his name's Aaron. The seller's name was Aaron, and he called me, and he's like, "I saw your sign. I need to sell my house." And I'm like, "Great. How much do you want for it?" And he tells me, and I'm like, "Okay. How soon are you looking to close?" And he's like, "I need to sell it as soon as I can." I'm like, "Okay, all right, man. Sounds good." And we hung up. That literally that was the exact phone call. And I'm like standing in the kitchen, and Crystal's like, "Dude, you didn't get an address. You didn't get." anything from that guy. And I'm like, oh shoot, you're right. So then I called him back and I'm like, hey man, I realized I didn't get your address or any other information. He's like, yeah, I thought that was weird. And I'm like, yeah, sorry, it's been a long day. So yeah, luckily enough, got his address. And then yeah, I went and walked the house, super beat up. I mean, typical wholesale house, right? Just
Hmm.
ugly as heck. Needed a lot of work. He was, he was highly motivated. He just got out of jail, lost his family, it was crazy stuff. And so we locked it up and then sold it to Crystal's one of her oldest best friends was is a real estate agent. He's a developer
Hmm.
now, but at that time he was flipping as well. And so he went with me to go look at it, and then he made an offer, and he was like, "Hey, I'll buy this from you." And then ended up making a $16,000 assignment on our first deal, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like I'll never forget the day we got the check,
Hmm.
and I was like, "This is real." Like I just made 3 months of my income in like 3.5 weeks.
It's a really cool story just because it was a lot of imperfect action. I mean, even the call
Yeah.
that you had, like you didn't even get the address, but it turned into $16,000. How do you know how to what price to lock? I mean, how did you even know it was is a deal?
So that's when I, again, right, being resourceful, right, who we
Hmm.
know is, and I think everybody at this time now knows an agent at some point, your cousin,
Hmm.
aunt, whatever. So we called this guy up, and hey, I got this house. Seller wants to sell it, and he knew we're getting into wholesaling. So I was like, what should I lock this thing up at? He wants, I think at that time he wanted like 126, 127. And I
Hmm.
ended up getting him down to 120, 110.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
when this buyer came in, he's like, I buy this thing at 126. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. Like I'm not gonna combat that. I'll take that all
yeah.
day. And yeah, so it's just being resourceful. And then that's one thing that I in essence, like I kind of pride myself on is there's no such thing as like any stupid question, right? I
Hmm.
think every question can be asked.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't afraid to ask people like, hey, how do you do this? And how do you evaluate a property? And how do you know what it's worth? And what's the price per square foot? And when you walk with a buyer, right? Like, what are you looking for? Right? What are you looking at? You're walking around looking at things like in a way that I don't understand. So teach me.
Yeah.
And that helped me a lot moving forward because now it was every house I went to, I had an idea in my mind on what does this look like?
Yeah, something really powerful is being willing to be honest and say, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me?
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. All right, so what kind of mindset issues did you have to get through in order to get that first deal?
I will say like the momentum, right? I was so high on just like the motivation to like aspect, right?
Hmm.
Before I left for those few weeks, it was I was just driven off of motivation, which motivation only takes you so far, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but it ended up becoming like a habit for me, right? So when I got back, the realization of like, okay, I've been out of it for a few weeks, right? I've been just doing
Hmm.
what I need to do with the army. I either dive into this thing and really do my best to make it happen, or we just say that hey, it was something we thought about, tried for a couple months,
Hmm.
um, but hey, let's give it a shot. Let's really see what happens. And so once I made that commitment, Crystal and I sat down and agreed like this is what we'll go after.
Hmm.
Um, I don't remember if we had a conversation about how long we were going to ride that wave for, but mm, I can say it was the nights where it was like late. I'm driving around. It was like just pure like manifestation.
Hmm.
Right? Like this is gonna work. This is gonna be the sign. And I remember I would say that every time I put a sign up. I'm like, this is gonna be the sign.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just like utter belief, right? This utter relentless belief of this is gonna work, this is gonna happen, and that was like where my mindset was at. Once you make the commitment, you gotta make the commitment. And I think the reality is that once you do make the commitment, on the hard days is where you have to remind yourself, right? Like, hey, I
Mhm.
said I was gonna do this thing, and I'm gonna go after it.
Yeah, I mean, 100% motivation only gets you so far. I mean, the fact that you went and every time you placed a bandit sign or did something, you just kept telling yourself, reassuring yourself, it has to be something that helped a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a mindset thing, right?
Mhm.
We have to. I mean, even now, right? There's the daily mindset we have to set ourselves up with for the day. How do we ground ourselves for the day? What are we going into the day with? Kind of energy are we carrying with us?
Yeah.
And you know, that was something I learned early on, but didn't realize how much further it could go. As we got down here to where we are now.
Yeah, something that I was thinking about where was the day before. So what is today? Wednesday, Monday, I won the mindset battle, right? Was ending the day on a high. And then yesterday, struggle with it, right? Every day is a new battle. It just never goes away.
Yeah,
Never goes away.
no, it's true, bro. It's facts.
Yeah. So where are you at now? Like, I'm interested to see what it is that you're working on now.
Yeah, so believe it or not, actually, we live in Mexico.
Okay.
We moved from Arizona to Mexico to open a staffing company. So we opened a virtual staffing company.
Oh, I know Crystal. I met her at Squad Up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One of the OG members.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember. I knew the name looked familiar. Very cool. How's that going?
It's good, man. It's good. It's a lot of fun. It has its ups and downs like any business, right? And so there's a lot of pivots that
Mhm.
we have to make, whether it's with different clientele or the type of hires that we're getting, making the trainings better, just really being very conscious of what decisions we make and how they impact the company, but also clientele and everybody else. So it's fun. We enjoy it.
Yeah, very cool. Man, I didn't put that together, but awesome. So I guess now knowing what you know now, what's some advice you would give to yourself when you're just getting started?
Um, Man, it's always a good question. I would tell myself it's funny, and it has like nothing to do with the business side of things. It's
Hmm.
all like more so me, right? Like, you're qualified, is what I would tell myself, right?
Hmm.
I think when we all get started doing something, we all have this like kind of anxious, I don't know everything, and I feel like I should know a lot more. And if I knew
Hmm.
more, I'd go further, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we don't give ourselves enough credit, as much as we should, right? There's so much more that we do know and that we have access to.
Yeah.
But when we're in the thick of it, it's hard to see that, and so it's easy to tell yourself, "Oh man, I'm not good enough. Maybe I just suck at this. Like maybe I'm just not doing the right thing."
Hmm.
Um, and so I would go back and I would tell myself like, "Hey, you're qualified to do
Yeah.
this. Like,
Yeah.
and it's gonna work out."
Yeah. That's great advice. I mean, something that we all need to hear because we are in this world, we're always doing something that we're not comfortable with that we've done for the first time, right? And so being able to
Bro, I was like, "What is that?"
Did you get it?
Yeah,
All right.
trip in Mexico, the trip. You get the weirdest bugs.
Well, I mean, just moving to Florida from I used to live in DC, and then just moving to Florida, the bugs that we have here, just like it's already. I can't imagine
Yeah,
living in Mexico worse.
dude. Like every now and then you'll find a scorpion, and you're like, "What?"
Okay. Are they? Did you ever get stung by one?
Yeah, no, I haven't gotten stung by one yet. I almost did because I had a cup of coffee on my desk and I just
Uh,
finished my cup.
yeah.
Put it
Mhm.
down, had a meeting, came back, was gonna
Yeah.
go for a refill, and I
Uh-huh.
looked at the cup and I was like, "Whoa!" And it was like trying to climb out, and I'm like, "Hey!"
I heard
Yeah,
they hide in shoes too.
dude, they had everything. They had shoes, they had under your backpack, had under a notebook. It's the worst.
Yeah, not something I would enjoy.
No.
Um, where was I at? I don't remember, but dude, it was great to meet you. How can people reach out to you? How can people work with you?
Yeah, they can reach out via Facebook or Instagram, either or.
Okay, and then we'll have those in the description, just so it's easy. Do you want to promote your staffing company too, or?
Yeah, if anybody's ever looking for virtual staffing, right, whether it's cold callers, lead managers, administrative assistants, stuff like that, yeah, more than welcome to reach out, send me a DM. If
Okay.
you send it, if whoever's listening to this, if you send me a DM, just let me know that you came from this podcast, and that way you get it. We'll give you a little deal. Give you a deal on your startup stuff.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you again for coming on.
Absolutely, bro. I appreciate you, man.